What's up, guns? You know, on the surface, the Final Fantasy VII remakes appear to be reflex-based action games, but the real truth is that they're tactical RPGs, all about resource management and strategy instead of skill issues. It's also obvious once it's explained, but it can take hundreds of hours to learn this shit without someone there to explain it. This guide as a whole, it's intended to explain the game's numerous systems and complexities, all framed within a set of rules. This specific video will cover a short TLDR of everything as explained through rule number 1, which is the most important rule. Knowing all these rules will empower players to solve problems with creativity, to customize, experiment, min-max, whatever, because they'll actually understand how everything fits together. Now, if you want a quicker lesson, you could read a text version of this guide on Reddit called the FF7 Rulebook. I'll provide a link below in the description. And if you want a TLDR for this guide, here it is. The key to a fluid playstyle is to use basic attacks to get ATB, play defense with block to get more ATB, and constantly switch between all three heroes to get even more ATB. And the key to defeating enemies is learning their weaknesses with the assess materia, exploiting those weaknesses in order to build up the stagger bar, carefully triggering stagger, and then using it to end fights in seconds rather than minutes. Finally, the key to understanding character builds is to pile on buffs and debuffs, use time magic to enhance ATB gains, build everything around routines, which are sets of actions that work well together, and always use weapon upgrades to tie everything together. There's a metric ton of things to cover, but that's the whole game in about 2 minutes. So let's do it. My name's not actually Dick, it's Philip, and for the love of the motherfucking game, I want to teach you how to paint with all the colors of the rainbow. We're gonna whoop some ass. If there is a golden rule for these games, it's that ATB matters more than everything else. I'm going to use the sweeper fight here to show that everything in this strategy RPG revolves around everyone's active battle time gauge thing. Eyes down here. Alright, gonna run through this fight one time uninterrupted, and then break it down in insufferable detail. Cool? Okay, I'm using basic attacks to get ATB. I'm canceling into block because block gets more ATB. I land my block and boom, I got enough ATB. We switch to Barret, overcharge for ATB, hit the enemy with its weakness, which is Thunder, switch back to Cloud. Thunder hits and pressures the enemy. Cloud's going to use Focus Thrust to increase the stagger bar. He's going to switch to Punisher. Stagger happens. Hold attack to activate Berserk. Use Braver. Switch to Barret. Get that ATB bar. Use Thunder. Switch to Cloud, get that ATB bar, Braver, switch to Barret, and he's dead. Whoops some ass. Now, everything I just did there was about ATB. 1 bar for pressured, 1 bar for staggered, 3 bars for dead. Now, let's both make a note of the big money damage here for a second, and we're gonna rewind and do this play-by-play shit. Right away, turn 1, the sweeper is looking at Barret. This means that my first move is for Cloud to safely, basic attack, mashy. But it's not for damage. I mean, look at this. 10, 20, 40 damage, it's nothing. Hey, we saw real damage. Together. A minute ago, remember? And basic attacks are tools, not damage dealers, and they're mostly for making ATB bars. Also worth noting, if I take damage while mashing, it can slow or even stop the ATB. So basic attacks are kind of like a liability. That unsettling truth is enough to make me a little paranoid, so you see me start canceling my attacks into block in anticipation of the enemy attacking Cloud. In general, I try, usually fail, but try not to mash, and keep a nice rhythm of 1, 2, 3 block. Successful blocks fill the ATB, so 1, 2, 3 block means, theoretically, constant ATB, versus the risk of mashing into a hit and then the bar stops gaining. When I finally land a block, eyes down here, Cloud winds up with almost 2 bars. So from my perspective, this fight is pretty much over. Everything from this point forward is what I would call a series of routines. Routine, that's a glossary term, make a flashcard. So Cloud has almost 2 bars. I'm going to switch to Barret, do one of his little routines, then switch back to Cloud and do one of his. It's worth noting that I don't need to wait for Cloud's bar to finish charging because everyone has passive ATB gain from their speed stat. In other words, the second bar is just going to fill out on its own. So, first routine of the day is going to be Barret's Overcharge. That's going to be where we switch to Barret, use his unique attack, which is Overcharge, to quickly gain ATB, immediately spend that free ATB on something, and then switch off. Thanks to the magic of animation cancels and the time slowing effect from tactical mode, it'll be like it never happened time-wise. It all happens so fast that when I switch to Barret, I'm already mashing unique attack, because I'm just anxious to get that ATB. You know, Overcharge is going to give him about as much ATB as a basic attack string. And then the instant that final hit lands, I throw up tactical mode to freeze time, and then I use that free ATB to cast Thunder, which is the elemental weakness of the sweeper. Well, actually, every robot. See, all of this happened in no time at all. The whole thing is basically for free. Now, Overcharge would be busted as shit if the developers didn't add a recharge mechanic to keep it on a leash. But I digress. Now, I don't wait for Thunder to cast. I switch right back to Cloud and open up tactical mode, which I open very often. In this case, it's just me jumping the gun and being anxious again, which is basically my brand, but tactical mode is amazing. For starters, it gives me a chance to slow things down and think about stuff so I never get overwhelmed. But just as importantly, I can use it for 0 skill animation cancels. More animation cancels means more ATB, and more ATB means more damage. Now, the Barret routine I just did is a perfect example of all of this. So next comes the Thunder hit, which will knock the sweeper off balance and put it in a pressured state, where the stagger bar, this little orange bar beneath the health bar, can be filled very fast. Once the enemy is pressured, I'm going to go into Cloud's basic stagger routine. That's the next routine we're doing. This is where Cloud uses focus thrust to increase the stagger bar, and then uses unique attack to switch to Punisher mode. And from Punisher mode, he activates Berserk, which is a damage buff. And finally, Cloud uses some ATB to do massive damage to the enemy, who's now taking bonus damage from multiple sources. It's important to understand that I'm using the term routine here because routines are flexible. I may have a list of actions to perform, but there's always going to be room for situational adjustment. Even the first thing I do here has adjustments. I use Focus Thrust, which mostly fills the stagger bar, but instead of using another ability to trigger stagger, I hesitate on purpose, and I do some basic attacks to get extra ATB. The logic here is that Focus Strike costs a bar, and by mixing in some attacks I can regain most of it. Now, just an inch away from stagger, I switch Cloud to Punisher so that I can use his heavy attack, which is holding basic attack, to activate Berserk, and that is going to give him a nice tasty damage boost. Even at this early stage in the game, see, we're stacking bonus damage, one from stagger and one from Berserk. As a result, the remainder of this fight is what they call academic. The equation is very simple. Damage plus ATB equals big money damage. Cloud has almost 2 ATB bars, and Barret almost has a bar. The controlled character always gets more ATB than non-controlled ones. So this whole next sequence of events is me just switching around to finish off ATB bars and spend them quickly. I'm going to activate Braver on Cloud, get some of that big money damage, instantly switch to Barret and finish out his bar. I finish off Barret's clip, cast another Thunder, then switch right back to Cloud. I use a single hit just to finish off his ATB bar, use another Braver, and then switch back to Barret again. At this point, the fight's over. Cloud's Braver hits, and boom, 500 damage. Once again, let's just think about that compared to the crappy damage my basic attacks were doing earlier. Let's watch this one more time uninterrupted, and think about what I actually did here. I used basic attacks to get ATB, I used block to get more ATB, I used Barret's unique attack to get more ATB, and then I used ATB bars to exploit the enemy weakness, put them into pressured, another bar to convert pressured into stagger, and then I used sum total 3 ATB bars to explode my enemy. It's all about ATB. There's no action game here, it's just an RPG pretending to be an action game. And as long as I play defense, use tactical mode, gain and spend ATB intelligently, it's GG every time. The sweeper fight's like a giant training dummy for all of this. I want to do one more example just to hammer this home about ATB. Here's Tifa versus the two flamethrower bozos, and at the start of the fight, you're going to see me get real lucky. I get behind one of them and I land enough attacks so that the trooper's tank catches fire, explodes, and blows him off screen. I think to myself, well, that was the best thing ever. And I go try to do it to the other guy. Unfortunately, it doesn't go like that, and I just run around in circles hitting him. I'm basically accomplishing nothing, and before long, the flame trooper I blew away comes back. But just look at the damage I did on him, it's nothing. Spend a little bit more time failing, and then eventually I remember how to play this game. When Tifa stands back up from getting knocked over, I use a single fire cast, and boom, instant death. I had enough ATB to do that probably 5 or 10 seconds into the fight. Instead, I just spent damn near a whole minute screwing around, doing nothing. The sweeper fight is no different. Had I relied on basic attacks, I probably would have wailed on it for entire minutes. Instead, I wasted him in roughly 1 minute. What I'm trying to teach with these examples is that I can waste my ATB or sit on it, ignore the golden rule, and I'll just wail away on enemies forever. Or I can respect the golden rule, which will result in me knocking over enemies and killing them in seconds.